Where do you usually sleep?
Tunnels. My mom sold me to men when I was like 3 years old and up to 13 years old.
All right, so she used to sell you, and
Sell me for drugs.
she used to sell you for drugs.
Yes.
What type of drugs did she do to make
Like
her do that?
meth, coke, cocaine, bunch of shit. The hardest part is surviving and trying to get some food every day. Hustling, panhandling, and shit like that. I've been trying to get some food.
Tunnels?
I go, you know where there's a tunnel like when
By the Walmart?
No, by the 35th and Dallas, you go down a little bit, there's a canal.
Yeah.
And down there, there's a tunnel. I would sleep down there.
You have blankets and pillows or any of that stuff?
No, I just sleep on the hard concrete. I use my bag.
Your bag?
For my pillow. I want everyone out there, God bless y'all, be safe out there. This world is bad, like, to be honest. I don't like, this area is like, don't ever go to 35th and Dallas. It's bad over there.
America is losing affordable rooms one city at a time. Across the country, homelessness is no longer only visible in the places Americans expect. It is showing up in wealthy cities, tourist cities, Sunbelt cities, college towns, suburbs, places with full restaurants, busy hotels, new apartments, and streets that still look healthy from a distance. The pattern keeps repeating. Rent rises, wages lag, shelters fill. Families double up. Workers move from one temporary room to another. Older residents wait longer for help that may not come in time. America is not only facing a homelessness crisis, it is facing a housing stability crisis. And that crisis looks different in every city. In San Antonio, it appears behind one of the most familiar postcards in Texas. The Alamo, the Riverwalk, the lights on the water, the hotels and convention crowds. Visitors come here looking for memory, food history, and warm nights downtown. But behind the lights, more locals are losing the rooms that kept them stable. To understand San Antonio's homeless crisis, do not begin with the postcard. Begin where the Riverwalk lights stop reaching. On the surface, San Antonio looks like a city built from memory. The Riverwalk glows below downtown hotels. The Alamo draws visitors into Old Stone. Convention crowds move through the center, and 36.8 million visitors can make the city feel endlessly alive. But behind the water, behind the lights, behind the number 3625, there is another San Antonio, a city where the tourist image does not show the whole cost of staying. For visitors, San Antonio can feel easy to love. You walk beside the river. You hear music from a restaurant patio. You pass hotels, shops, bridges, boats, and families taking pictures under warm lights. The city offers history without asking you to carry its pressure. But locals carry it. The worker washing hotel sheets. The cook preparing food before lunch. The older renter watching another bill arrive. The mother trying to keep a child's routine steady. The person in a cheap motel counting the nights left before the money runs out. That is the divide this episode follows. Not San Antonio as a postcard. San Antonio as a place people have to afford. The crisis here is not only visible in tents or shelter lines, it is also visible in the distance between the city visitors enjoy and the rooms local workers can actually keep. A tourism economy can bring life, jobs, and money into a city. But if housing stability does not rise with it, the people who serve that economy can become the first to fall out of view. That is why San Antonio matters. Because behind the Riverwalk, behind the Alamo, behind the hotel lights, a different question is waiting. Who gets to stay in the city everyone came to remember? To answer that, we have to walk away from the brightest water and enter the city from street level. Before we walk farther, tell us where you are watching from. Does your city welcome visitors while locals struggle to afford staying there? And when the lights come on downtown, what do they hide where you live? Now enter San Antonio from street level. Start where the postcard is strongest. The Riverwalk bends through downtown. Water moves under bridges. Restaurant lights reflect on the surface. Hotel balconies look down toward the boats. Tourists slow their steps because the city seems built for lingering. Someone takes a picture. Someone studies a menu. Someone points toward the Alamo. For a few blocks, San Antonio feels exactly like the promise sold to visitors. History, warmth, food, memory, a place America wants to keep. But keep walking. Leave the brightest water behind. Move past the hotel entrances, past the convention traffic, past the restaurants where workers come in through side doors before the first guests sit down. The city changes when you stop moving like a visitor. A bus stop becomes a waiting room. A backpack becomes storage. A motel receipt becomes a deadline. A folded paper from a shelter becomes the closest thing to a plan. Someone checks a phone. Someone asks about a bed. Someone counts the money left for one more night indoors. This is San Antonio too. Not separate from the Riverwalk. Behind it. Beside it. Working for it. Living under the same economy that makes the tourist city feel alive. So before the official number arrives, make your guess. How many people do you think were experiencing homelessness across Bexar County in the latest count? 2,000, 3,000, more than 3,500. Drop your guess in the comments. We will come back to the answer soon. Because once the number appears, the Riverwalk looks different. It becomes part of a larger question. Who gets to enjoy the city and who can still afford to stay? Now the number arrives. The latest count found 3,625 people experiencing homelessness across Bexar County. 3,625. That is not a rumor. That is not a feeling. That is the official count from the local homelessness system, and it was higher than the year before. In 2024, the count was 3,372. In 2025, it rose to 3,625, an increase of 7.5%. That is why the word growing matters here. Not because the city is collapsing, not because every street looks the same, but because more people were being counted without a stable place to live. The split matters too. Of those counted, 2,489 were sheltered. 1,136 were unsheltered. That means most people were not necessarily visible to a visitor walking the Riverwalk. They were inside shelters, inside temporary systems, inside places that keep a person alive, but do not always mean the crisis is over. And more than 1,000 were outside, on streets, in cars, near service providers, in places never designed to hold a human life overnight. This changes the way San Antonio should be seen, because homelessness here is both hidden and visible. It is in the shelter bed. It is under the overpass. It is behind the hotel. It is in the motel room that cannot be paid for next week. It is in the moment when a working person becomes one bill short of losing the last door. Almost half of those counted were experiencing homelessness for the first time. That detail should stop us, because it means this crisis is not only reaching people who have been outside for years. It is reaching people newly pushed out, people who may have worked recently, paid rent recently, had a key recently, people who did not think they would need help until the math broke. And one of those lives could look like Rosa. By the time Rosa enters this story, the number has already become personal. It is no longer 3,625. It is a bus pass tucked behind a folded shelter paper, a pair of black work shoes worn thin at the heel, a medication bottle with the label starting to fade, a cheap motel receipt creased inside a plastic bag, an old Fiesta pin clipped to the side not for celebration, but for memory. Rosa is not one specific person. She is a composite character based on documented homelessness patterns, housing instability service work, first-time homelessness, and local shelter pressure in San Antonio and Bexar County. Her story begins before the visitors come downstairs, before hotel elevators open, before restaurant patios fill, before the Riverwalk becomes a photograph again. For years, Rosa worked near the city other people came to enjoy. Laundry rooms, kitchen prep, cleaning shifts, small jobs that made downtown function while tourists saw only the finished version. She knew the back entrances, the early buses, the employee doors, the quiet side of the visitor economy. She was not wealthy, but she was working. She had a room, a routine, a way to keep going. Then the room became more expensive. The motel nights became harder to cover. A bill arrived. Hours changed. Medicine cost more than expected. 1 week indoors became another week uncertain. That is how homelessness can enter a life. Not always as a long history, sometimes as a recent collapse. A working person loses the last affordable room and discovers how fast the system can become complicated. For Rosa, San Antonio is not just the Riverwalk. It is where she worked, waited for buses, washed uniforms, prepared food, and tried to hold on. She helped serve the city people came to remember. Now she is asking whether the city remembers her. And the answer begins with the housing math. Keep Rosa in view as the city becomes math. Not tourism math, housing math. The kind that decides whether a worker stays indoors or starts slipping toward the edge. Rent, utilities, medication, bus fare, phone service, a motel night when the lease is already gone. A deposit that has to be paid before a key is ever placed in your hand. San Antonio may still look more affordable than some American cities from the outside, but affordability is not measured from the outside. It is measured from the paycheck. It is measured after food, after medicine, after transportation, after the shift ends, and a person still has to find a room. The city's housing plan says 95,000 households in Bexar County are left without housing options affordable to them. That is not a small gap. That is a citywide pressure system. And for the lowest income renters, the pressure is even sharper. Texas Housers reported that 77% of extremely low-income renter households in the San Antonio metro area are severely cost-burdened. That means rent and utilities take more than half of income. More than half. Before food, before gas, before medicine, before a child needs shoes, before a worker loses hours. For Rosa, this math does not arrive as a report. It arrives as a receipt. One motel night, then another. Then the week becomes too expensive. It arrives as a phone call where the rent is higher than expected. A deposit she cannot reach. A room that requires income she cannot prove. A bus ride to a job that does not pay enough to rebuild stability. This is how a tourist city can produce homelessness without looking broken. The restaurants still open, the hotels still fill, visitors still walk beside the water. But behind the service doors, the workers who make the city function may be living one bill away from losing the last room. For Rosa, the question is not whether San Antonio is beautiful. It is. The question is whether beauty leaves room for the people who keep it running. And that pressure is pushing many people into homelessness for the first time. The pressure does not stop with Rosa. It spreads through lives that still look ordinary from the outside. That is why the first-time homelessness number matters. Almost half of the unhoused individuals in the latest local reporting were experiencing homelessness for the first time. First time. That phrase changes the image. It means someone may have had a key recently, a lease recently, a job recently, a routine recently, a place where medicine stayed on a shelf, and papers did not have to be carried in a bag. For some people, homelessness is a long emergency. For others, it is new, sudden, humiliating, confusing. A door closes and the system becomes a maze. In Bexar County, the vulnerable groups inside the crisis are not all the same. Some people are older workers. Some are families trying not to break apart. Some are young adults carrying histories of foster care or unstable housing. Some are survivors of violence who need safety before anything else can be solved. Some are people with health conditions that turn every night outside into risk. For Rosa, these are not categories on a report. They are people beside her in line. People waiting at the same bus stop. People asking the same question in different ways. Where do I go next? A mother may still make breakfast out of a bag. A young person may still keep their story hidden. A survivor may still be deciding who can be trusted. A worker may still show up for a shift while the motel receipt in her pocket is already expired. This is why San Antonio's crisis feels larger than the count. Because first-time homelessness means the edge is moving closer to ordinary lives. It means the tourist city is not only dealing with people who have been outside for years, it is seeing new people fall into the system. And when more people arrive at the door, the question becomes whether the door can hold. Now the door has to hold. In San Antonio, that door often has a name people recognize: Haven for Hope. A large campus, a major response point, a place where shelter services, outreach, healthcare connections, meals, and case management come together for people who have nowhere stable to go. But no shelter system exists outside pressure. When more people become homeless for the first time, more people arrive at the door. When motel money runs out, more people need somewhere to land. When families, older adults, Workers, survivors, and people with health problems all need help at once. Even a strong system can feel overwhelmed. Haven for Hope has been part of San Antonio's response for years. It has helped people move from survival towards stability. That matters. This story should not pretend the city is doing nothing. It is not. There are providers, outreach workers, case managers, volunteers, city staff, county partners, people who wake up every day to help someone find the next step. But the system is strained. Local reporting said Haven for Hope faced a $10 million shortfall after pandemic-era federal funding ended. That kind of gap is not just an accounting problem. It becomes a human problem. A bed, a meal, a worker, an intake appointment, a program that may have to stretch farther than it was designed to stretch. For Rosa, shelter pressure is not policy language. It is the difference between being seen today and waiting again tomorrow. It is whether the folded paper in her bag leads to a real place. It is whether the motel receipt becomes a bridge or a dead end. Shelter can save a night. Outreach can save a life. But neither can replace the one thing everyone is still searching for, a room that can be kept. And that is why the next reveal matters. One hotel fills, one rent rises, one local loses a room. San Antonio sells memory, while local workers are losing rooms. Not just tourists, not just tents, a room crisis. That is the reveal. San Antonio's homeless crisis is not only about people sleeping outside. It is about a tourist city where the rooms beneath the postcard are disappearing from reach. Look again at the Riverwalk. The boats, the bridges, the lights on the water, the hotel windows glowing above downtown, the restaurants filling with visitors who came to feel history without carrying its pressure. All of that is real. San Antonio is beautiful, but beauty does not pay rent. Memory does not cover a deposit. Tourism does not guarantee that the worker folding sheets, washing dishes, cleaning rooms, or preparing food can keep a place nearby. This is the contradiction. The city can welcome millions of visitors and still fail to stabilize the people who make those visits possible. It can sell warmth while workers sleep cold. It can preserve history while families lose the rooms where their own histories were being built. It can keep the Riverwalk glowing while someone like Rosa counts the money left for one more motel night. That is why the first-time homelessness detail matters. Because the crisis is not only about people who have been outside for years, it is also about people recently pushed out of ordinary life. People who had keys, receipts, work schedules, medicine, routines. People who were close to stability until one bill, one rent increase, or one lost shift changed everything. The problem is not that San Antonio has visitors. The problem is that the city's housing stability has not kept pace with the pressure beneath the visitor economy. And once you see that, the question changes. It is not whether San Antonio can keep attracting people. It is whether San Antonio can keep housing the people already here. That is why the next act has to be fair. Because the city is not doing nothing. This is where the story has to stay honest. San Antonio is not doing nothing. That version would be simple. It would also be false. There are shelter workers, outreach teams, case managers, health providers, nonprofits, churches, city staff, county partners, people trying to keep a fragile system moving while the need keeps growing. Haven for Hope is part of that response. So are the organizations connected to Shelter Street outreach, housing, navigation, mental health care, substance use treatment, domestic violence support, and permanent housing. Every person helped through that system matters. Every night indoors matters. Every family kept together matters. Every worker who answers another call, fills out another form, or walks towards someone outside is doing work most people never see. But the existence of help does not mean the crisis is solved. A shelter bed is not a home. A case plan is not a lease. A motel voucher is not permanent stability. An outreach visit is not the same as an affordable room. That is the gap San Antonio faces. The city has response systems, but the inflow keeps coming. More people arrive after rent breaks them. More people arrive after family support runs out. More people arrive after violence, illness, job loss, aging, or one missed payment pushes them beyond the last door. For Rosa, the system is not a debate. It is a sequence of questions. Who can see her today? Where does she go tonight? Can she keep her medicine safe? Will the next appointment lead to a room or only another waiting list? That is why San Antonio cannot solve this by visibility alone, and it cannot solve it by compassion alone. The response has to become faster than the pressure. And that leads to what actually works. What actually works has to begin before the street, before the shelter line, before the motel receipt expires, before a worker is carrying everything they own into a lobby and asking where to go next. Prevention matters because the cheapest crisis to solve is the one that never becomes homelessness. Rental help before eviction. Legal support before a filing turns into a permanent barrier. Utility assistance before a household doubles up. Emergency aid before one lost shift becomes the loss of a room. But prevention alone is not enough. San Antonio also needs exits. Real exits. Not another temporary bed with nowhere to go afterward. Not another form that leads only to a waiting list. Permanent housing. Rapid rehousing that moves quickly enough to matter. Supportive housing for people facing long-term homelessness, disability trauma, or serious health problems. Safe housing for survivors of violence. Youth pathways for young adults leaving foster care, unstable homes, or systems that did not give them a real landing place. And deeply affordable rooms for the people the market is least likely to serve. For Rosa, the solution is not complicated in theory. A room with a lock, a place for medicine, a place where the fiesta pin the shelter papers the shoes, and the motel receipt can stop being carried everywhere. A place where tomorrow does not begin by packing up. For a family, it is a school routine that survives the month. For a worker, it is rest before the next shift. For an older person, it is health before the street makes everything worse. So the question for San Antonio is practical. Can the city build enough prevention, enough affordable housing, and enough permanent exits to move faster than the pressure? Because if it cannot, the cost will not stay behind the Riverwalk. The cost of waiting does not stay behind the Riverwalk. It spreads into hospitals, into schools, into shelters, into emergency rooms, into families trying to stay together one more week, into workers trying to keep a job while losing the room that made work possible. When housing fails, other systems start carrying the weight. A clinic becomes the place where homelessness appears as exhaustion, infection, blood pressure, or untreated pain. A classroom becomes the place where a child brings instability without knowing how to explain it. A shelter becomes the place where temporary help lasts longer than anyone planned. A hotel laundry room becomes the place where a worker folds sheets for guests while wondering where she will sleep after the shift. For Rosa, the cost is quieter. A missed bus, a pill bottle running low, a phone battery dying before the next call, a motel receipt she cannot renew, a shelter paper folded again because the answer is not ready. That is what waiting does. It turns ordinary life into a sequence of emergencies. It makes a locked door feel like medicine. It makes a phone charger feel like infrastructure. It makes rest feel like something other people can afford. And when enough people wait this way, the city changes too. Not all at once, person by person, room by room, receipt by receipt. The Riverwalk can still glow. Visitors can still arrive. But underneath the lights, the question grows heavier. What does a tourist city lose when the people who serve it cannot stay? That question is spreading beyond San Antonio. Return to Rosa. The old Fiesta pin is still clipped to her bag. The motel receipt is still folded inside the plastic. The shelter paper is still soft from being handled too many times. San Antonio is still moving around her. Boats pass under bridges. Hotel doors open. Restaurant patios fill. Visitors keep arriving with cameras, reservations, and time to wander. And Rosa is still asking whether the city has room for her. That question is not only being asked here. In Orlando, workers help create the vacation economy, while many struggle to live near the magic they serve. In New Orleans, music and memory draw visitors, while longtime locals face rising housing pressure. In Savannah, beauty fills the streets, while service workers and older residents fight to stay close to the city tourists love. In Charleston, history sells rooms while local families are pushed farther from the center. Different postcards, different accents, different rivers, the same pressure. A city becomes a destination. The destination becomes expensive. The people who keep it alive become less secure inside it. That is a pattern. San Antonio makes it easier to see because the contrast is so clear. Water above, receipts below, visitors moving slowly, workers counting nights. And once that pattern appears in one tourist city, it becomes impossible to ignore in the next. The tourist cities are warning us. Before we leave San Antonio, think about your own city, not the visitor version, the real version. The place where workers wait for buses before sunrise. The apartment complex where rent changed. The motel where a family stays 1 week at a time. The street where someone folds a blanket before the morning crowd arrives. The downtown lights that make everything look safer than it feels. So tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from? And where you live, is the city protecting the people who serve it, or only selling the image visitors came to see? Because this story is not only about San Antonio, it is about what happens when a city becomes a destination before it becomes stable for the people already there. A place can keep its restaurants, keep its hotels, keep its festivals, keep its history, keep the water glowing at night, and still lose the workers' families, older renters and survivors who need more than a beautiful downtown. 5 years from now, San Antonio will either be the city that turned tourism into stability for its workers, or the city that kept the Riverwalk glowing while locals disappeared behind it. The choice in some small way is also yours. For Rosa, that future is not symbolic. It is the next receipt, the next bus ride, the next appointment, the next door. She is still carrying the shelter paper, still protecting the medication, still wearing the black shoes that have walked through the city visitors came to remember. And as the Riverwalk keeps glowing, one question remains. Can San Antonio save its locals before the postcard becomes the only thing left? Morning returns to San Antonio. The Riverwalk begins to glow again. Water moves under the bridges. Hotel doors open. Restaurant lights come back on. Visitors step into downtown looking for the city they were promised. The Alamo, the food, the music, the feeling that history is still close enough to touch. And San Antonio is all of that. But somewhere beyond the postcard, Rosa is still moving too. The black shoes, the shelter paper, the medication bottle, the motel receipt, the old Fiesta pin clipped to her bag like a memory she refuses to lose. She is not outside the story of San Antonio. She is part of the labor that made the visitor city work. That is what this city teaches us. Homelessness is not only the absence of housing. Sometimes it is the slow loss of stability behind a beautiful image. A worker who can no longer keep a room. A family counting motel nights. An older renter waiting for help. A survivor trying to find safety. A city can keep its lights on and still lose people in the shadows. Earlier, we asked, what happens when America loses affordable rooms, one city at a time? In San Antonio, the answer is written behind the Riverwalk. The postcard stays bright, but the people behind it grow less secure. Tonight, the water will glow again. The boats will pass. The hotels will fill. But somewhere past the lights, someone will still be asking the simplest question. Where can I sleep? This has been No Address. And next time we walk another city, another street, another story, and another American crisis hiding in plain sight. Disclaimer. This documentary is for educational and journalistic purposes only. It discusses homelessness, poverty, mental health, addiction-related issues, housing policy, and public spending. Composite characters are based on patterns from public records, housing research, shelter data, court filings, and published case studies. They are not intended to identify any specific private individual. This video does not promote illegal activity, drug use, harassment, or harmful behavior. Some footage has been edited or blurred for privacy, safety, and compliance with YouTube community guidelines.